In both Elden Ring and Nightreign, claws are one of the stronger weapon types in the game. Not just because of the damage, because every single claw that you can find will come with a status, and they also have high motion values, which means their big heavy attacks are going to do great stance damage and generally going to be doing a lot more damage on their big charged attacks. Now, if you pair them with damage negation up on landing charge attacks and charge attack power-ups, you can have some of the strongest attacks in the game. With all that being said, which Nightfarer is the best pick to use claws? Now, for pure raw damage, obviously we're going to be looking at dex characters because the weapon itself scales with dex and a small amount of strength scaling. So generally your dex characters are going to get the most out of them. But of course, the claws, they all come with status. So dex arcane, you're probably going to get the most damage overall. But of course, dex and dex strength characters are going to work perfectly fine. So our choices become, because these characters all have either a dex arcane scaling or a dex scaling or a dex strength scaling. Wilder, he's strength and dex. Duchess, she has mostly dex with some intelligence. Iron Eye, again, mostly dex, but then with his arcane relic, he becomes a dex arcane character, even though he does lose out on some dexterity. Now the Undertaker, she's a strength character, but then you have a dex relic. I'm not a big fan of the dex relic, but we'll get into that. We'll talk about that later on in the video. And then we get Scholar, who is obviously an arcane, but you can use his dex relic, so he becomes arcane dex. And then our beloved Guardian, with his strength dex relic on, he does crazy amounts of damage. Now, in an ideal world, you want to be using a character that can poise through enemy attacks and trade with them. But that only leaves the Guardian, well, and Raider, but if you want pure damage, Raider's not your guy. So it only really leaves the Guardian. But then you're back out of that ideal world scenario because the Guardian dodges, like me, trying to get off the sofa after I've finished a full tin of biscuits. My American brothers, that's a full tin of cookies. Now, of course, you can obviously play the charge attacks one-handed with a shield, so you've got the shield as a safety net, but realistically, you don't really want to be using the Guardian for this kind of build, although he is perfectly viable and can do very insane damage. So anyway, yapping aside, let's get into the characters that you're most likely to use. Now, for the most raw damage without any relics, any buffs, or anything like that, the number one pick is going to be the Executor because he scales, he has the highest dexterity and he also has high arcane, which means he's going to do a lot of raw damage, but then he's also going to proc statuses very quickly. But then, if we throw buffs and relics and all that stuff into the mix, it then becomes Iron Eye and Duchess because, well, the Iron Eye has the mark and the Duchess has the restage, and they both have very high dexterity. But then you have to take into consideration, both of those don't have great stamina. That's when the Undertaker comes into the mix, well, because she has basically 2 stamina bars. With her Dex Relic on and the stamina refill, you can do insane damage. But with the Dex Relic on, which is what I mentioned earlier, I'm not a big fan of it, you lose a hefty amount of vigor. So although now you've got this insane damage output from the Undertaker, you are now a squishy character, and if you get trapped by, even a demi-human, you're going to get pulverized into a pool. So overall, for safety, Executor is going to be your pick. With his high dex and high arcane, and he also isn't a squishy character, you can make him insanely strong. And then you can add his dex and arcane relic in, which the damage potential becomes crazy. But my personal pick is not the Executor, mostly because of the stamina issue. Now, when you're charging attacks, your stamina is going to go so quickly. So with the right relics, the right weapon passives, Night Invaders, her Dex Relic, and her ability to refill her stamina on command when using the trance, which also gives you a damage increase, my pick is the Undertaker. Now, how to play claws? Because there is a little bit to it. Basically, you want to spam charge attacks. Ideally, spam charge attacks, you want to have damage negation up when landing charge attacks, and then pick up as many charge attack passives as you can, including the charge attack talisman. Obviously, it's a melee weapon, so any melee attack power-ups, any physical attack power-ups will work, and obviously you can make use of the attack power-up when wielding 2 armaments. So, power-ups. Now, your bread and butter is going to be charge attack power-ups, because the maximum one you can get is a 22%, and the lowest one you can get is a 16%, which is higher than both the physical attack power-up and the melee attack power-up's highest damage output. Second, you want to have the attack power up when wielding 2 armaments, because again, the lowest one of those is as high as the melee attack power up and also higher than the highest physical attack power up. Then it would be melee attack power up, and then it would be the physical attack power ups. For damage negation, now in the lower depths, you can just get away with landing charge attacks, boost damage negation. But in depth 4 and 5, you might want at least 1 damage negation at full, because, well, the Undertaker with the Dex Relic on does become a sub 1000 Vigor Nightfarer, which is 1-shot central even from like the demi-humans. And obviously, successive attacks boost damage negation will always work really well, because the idea is to be constantly attacking. Now, as for passives, hopefully they're self-explanatory, but if not, physical attack power up, because, well, it's a physical build. HP recovery up on successive attacks, and then you obviously have any stamina boost because it's a charge attack build, so you are going to be using a lot of stamina, and you're going to be out of stamina a lot. Now, as for the build, I will show you on a few different characters, because I do use it on a few different characters, and hopefully you can create something similar to any of these across the board, because, you know, Undertaker's my pick, she might not be your pick. So these are the builds that I use. First up, we have the Undertaker. So first up, we have the Glass Necklace. Because these successive attacks gives you a 9% damage boost when you're at the maximum successive attack boost, which you can get to that quite easy when using claws for the Undertaker. And then the activating ultimate art increases attack power. You get like an extra 18% when you hit the enemy with your art. Second relic is essentially just using it for the dormant powers, discovers claws. Obviously, we have the physical attack boost while using an incantation. I don't really tend to use that quite a lot, just because mostly I forget that, you know, when you use a buff on herself, she gets a damage boost. So that's really there for the dormant powers, discovers claws. And then the third and final relic on the base is essentially just a Night Invader, but obviously we also have the partial HP restoration. So deep relics, self-explanatory I would hope. Physical attack power up and increase maximum HP. Now, the increased maximum HP is just to make up for the vigor we lose when we're using her Dex Relic. I think it's 160. If I'm wrong, I'll put the exact number on screen. But yeah, HP up to recover the vigor we're losing from her Dex Relic, and the rest of it just physical attack power-ups. Next up, we have Alpha Wolf Executor. Now, the base relic's quite simple for me, mostly because I don't really have the best relics for Executor. Apart from that middle relic, obviously, which is the partial HP restoration and a Night Invader relic. Then obviously we've got the Balancer relic, and the top one is just his character skill boost attack, but lowers damage negation. Obviously, if you've got better relics for like a claw build, put them on, but this is what I use for the Executor. Now, for the deep relics, physical attack power up with increased max HP, just because I've got really good relics for that. You know, obviously you can use whatever you want, but you know, physical attack power up is the only thing you really want there. And then the middle one, we have the dormant powers, helps discovers claws with a physical attack power up. Next up for the Duchess, again, my base relics aren't the best, but obviously you can make them work. The top one is the improved attack power with 3+ claws. You could switch this out for the Night Invader if you wanted to. I was just trying something different with the 3+ claws. And then we have the +3 vigor. Middle relic, we're only really using that for the Hoarfrost Stomp. We'll get more to that later. And then the bottom relic is the Balancer relic, because if for some reason you're not finding the claws or whatever you want, you always have Hoarfrost Stomp. You have an extra 20% from your Balancer relic, and then if you find any kind of weapon in the game, you can just switch over to that and spam your L2. Now, as we mentioned with the Hoarfrost Stomp, as you can see on my deep relics, we have an attack power up when facing a frostbitten enemy. So basically, when the enemy is frostbitten, you get an extra 16% damage increase. The others are just physical attack power up with partial HP restoration. And then I've got a god roll for her Vigor Strength relic, which also has dormant powers, helps discovers claws, and a physical attack power up. We're not really too fussed about the mind, because obviously we're just going for damage, you know, in a claw build. So that relic, it basically just makes sense, because extra vigor, extra strength, the claws are going to scale a little bit better, and we've also got the physical attack power up. And last, but most certainly not least, we have Iron Eye. Now, base relics, top relic is just for the partial HP restoration with the Night Invader. Second relic is a god roll, obviously. It's a +1 character skill use with the dormant powers, helps discovers claws. And then the bottom relic is the Noster relic, just so we can start with poison and we get attack power from the poisoned enemy. But then also, if you look at our deep relics, we have an attack power up when phasing a poison afflicted enemy, which gives us a 20% damage increase. The rest of it is self-explanatory. Physical attack power up, his character skill which inflicts heavy poison damage, and then at the top we have defeating enemies that fills up the art gauge. So gamers, hopefully that gives you enough information to go off to make your own claw build. Obviously, any of the Nightfarers that we mentioned in the beginning of the video, Wilder, Scholar, Undertaker, Guardian, they're all viable with claws. They can all work incredibly well. There are just, for me personally, some better picks. So gamers, I've yapped for long enough. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you didn't, let me know. If you did, drop a sub, helps a brother out massively, support a brother. and I will catch you on the next one. Stay safe, big love, peace.